Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. This week's guest is Tyler Andrews. Tyler is a pro ultra runner who just raced in Hoka One One's Carbon X 100K world record attempt. Tyler and I talked about setting challenging and very public goals and why he loves continuing to do so. Tyler and I dug into what it means to be a successful runner, some tips on how to continue to improve over the years, and his love of the process and what balance means to him. Tyler runs for Hoka, Nuun Hydration, and Strive Trips. Enjoy. All right, welcome back. I'm here with Tyler Andrews in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Tyler, thanks for joining today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course. So you were a part of the Hoka 100K world record attempt this past weekend, and I wanted to chat about the public goals you've set for that, the public goals you've set in the past, and this, let's go for it and find out what happens later type approach that we both know and love.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that I love to do in terms of setting big, ambitious goals. And sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes it doesn't. But, you have to set yourself up to at least have the opportunity to do that. And this weekend was definitely an instance of that happening, where I set myself up to have a big day. But I also knew going into it that there were many more paths that ended in the medical tent and me dropping out than there were in me having an amazing debut and crushing it.
Definitely, and I want to dig into that a little bit before, but we have a very important question that Sabrina wants to know about your awesome haircut the day before the race.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a tradition. I like to cut my hair short, especially before a race, especially if it's going to be hot. I'm one of those people who just I'd like to try and get every second I can out of a race. Yep. And it's I have really thick curly hair, so I knew it was going to be a hot day, and I said, okay, I'm going to buzz all this off. So I went to a place next to our hotel and got a haircut.
Nice. I can appreciate that. I normally have a full beard, and I raced a marathon on Sunday, and I raced marathons with mustaches. So
there you go.
I couldn't take myself seriously any longer with the mustache. So
yeah, now
I'm clean shaven.
Well, how'd your marathon go? Let's talk about that first.
It was really good.
Yeah. Wait, what race did you run?
Providence.
Oh, nice.
I ran 20-minute PR.
Whoa.
And 2:59.
I should be interviewing you. That's awesome. 2:59.
2:59.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
So
that's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. It was a good day.
Wow.
A lot of things came together, and
yeah,
it was the first marathon I've run that went well.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thank you. So yeah, let's talk about on that exact note, setting big goals.
Sure.
What do you think it is about the possibility of coming up short that keeps us coming back?
Well, I think that when you have the opportunity to do something special, you have to risk more. I think that those are the moments that are the most exciting, that are the most engaging, and those are the moments that can really make or break your career. I think if you never take a big risk, you're never going to have a big breakthrough. And I'm someone who's also seen a lot of success through just kind of gradually getting better and better every year without taking big risks, at least in terms of, I never really made huge jumps in performance. I was always someone who just kind of got a little bit better each year. But I feel like I'm at the point now in my career where I do get these opportunities sometimes where it's kind of all or nothing. It's okay, this is a really big opportunity and you can go and do something really great and you can really change the trajectory of your career, and or you can do nothing. If you're conservative about it, there's not much benefit there. And if you're really aggressive, there's a lot of scenarios, a high percentage of the outcomes might be you failing miserably, but the few that go really well are going to go really well. And so it's worth taking that bet.
What's one big breakthrough, whether it's mental or physical, that you look back on, not necessarily as, that time was awesome, but whether it was physically doing something you hadn't done before, or going to a pain cave, or mentally clicking?
Yeah, I think that the most obvious instance of that was the first time I qualified for the Olympic trials back in 2014. And I knew that I was in really good shape and I had the opportunity. It was a great day. I was at CIM, which is a super fast course. It was a loaded field, like always, with kind of that sub-elite Olympic trials qualifier pack. And I kind of made a move in the middle of the race to leave that pack and go in front, and ended up kind of in no man's land. And that was another moment I think about of like, okay, it could have gone really poorly. I could have been isolated. I could have been going too fast too early. And I mean, I did positive split. And so like, I think that one worked out better because there was more margin for error. But I still, I ran a race that I was really proud of, and I ran a 4-minute PR or something that day to qualify for the trials for the first time. So, it's those kind of instances that I've kind of looked for over the years of where's there a way for you to do something really special. And the caveat to that, or the other side of that coin, is that you often end up, getting screwed a lot of the time, because when you take those big chances, like a lot of the time they're not going to go well. So I've had, like a whole season where I've lost like a whole season because, I went really hard in training and got injured, or, like this race here where it's like I've trained for 6 months for one race and don't even finish. So, you have to kind of accept that that's the cost of trying to tackle these big goals.
Definitely. And, even if you don't achieve the goal, my coach, David Roche, is a big fan of, as you said, consistency over time and not focusing too much on one race. And what he continues to remind us is that no matter how the race goes, you carry that fitness, going forward. So he's encouraged me to look at it more along the lines of like, what you're doing today is benefiting race day, but it's also benefiting the next race day and the next race day and the next race day.
Yeah, exactly. I listened to Scott Fauble talk after Boston Marathon when he ran 209. It's an incredible race. And he said something to the extent of like, the day before the race, I was already really confident. Like I already knew that I was like, way in PR shape. And so however the race went, I was already feeling great about my fitness and my training block. And sometimes you have a race where you're like, oh man, my training just really didn't work, and that's why that race didn't go well. But for me, this is an example of that wasn't why. I was super fit. My workouts went really well. My taper went really well. My race strategy went well until it didn't. And so this is just like, okay, like the cards didn't fall your way, but you still put in some really special work this block, and you set yourself up for a lot of success in the future.
Definitely. So a lot of the listeners of the podcast here are from Boston, and following you on Strava, I've noticed that a lot of your training over the last few months has been these, looping circuits around 2-3 bridges around the Charles River. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, what did training for a road 100K look like, and what were some of the key sessions leading up to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I owe Jonas Hampton that loop that I worked out on a lot, which is basically from Arsenal Street to JFK and Harvard. It's about 4 miles around, and it's nice because it's no stoplights or anything. It's continuous. And we knew pretty early on what the 100K, the Project Carbon X race, was going to look like. It was going to be a point-to-point start with a net downhill, and then some number of loops of about that distance of about 4 or 5 miles around a river. And so again, just like trying to do as much as we can, my coach and I tried to simulate that with the long runs that we did. So I did probably 4 or 5 different runs where I'd start out in Lexington, run down the Minuteman bike path to Alewife, and then over to this river loop, and then finish up on the loop. And it was a really, really good way to get my mind ready for what the race was going to feel like, in terms of having this long, very lonely section at the start where you're just running point to point, and then really getting to this loop and feeling like, okay, this is where the race starts. And that's, my coach referred to it as the warm up, the first 30K. It's just the warm up, and then you only have 70K to go. But so that was really my goal, was to mimic what the race course is going to feel like as much as possible. So in terms of training, that was, those sessions were really kind of my bread and butter my last 2 months while I was here in Boston. Before that, I spent about 2.5 months down in Quito, Ecuador, which is kind of my winter altitude base nowadays. I'm a huge baby about the snow and cold, as anyone who knows me can
It's fun to
attest
see
to.
you along the river I'm wearing shorts and you're in, a parka.
Well, that was also calculated because I also knew it was going to be hot. Yeah. And it was like 40 degrees for all of April. So I was like trying to just get my body temperature up as much as I could. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Even if I'm not heat training, I'm still going to be dressed more than anyone else because I'm a baby. But yeah, so basically the first half of the season was at altitude. Excuse me.
And that's what, 10,000 feet?
It's about 9,000 feet in Quito, and then we would go down to about 7,000 sometimes to do faster workouts. But that was a really great block. I put in a huge block of mileage. I think it was like 3 weeks at 160 or something miles. And then came back here in beginning of March, and then March and April were my 2 big months here. So in terms of like really key sessions, like things where I was like, okay, this ultra stuff is like, maybe I'm okay at this. Like my first session back was I ran the Rock and Roll DC Marathon, and ran like a very controlled, winning the race in 2:24, I think, and then
that was April, right?
This was early March. This is like This is, I guess, 2 months out from the race. So yeah, I ran 2:24, and then like 2 hours later, I did a 20K at race pace. So it's like 65K for the day. It was a really big day, and a lot of it fast, or like relatively fast at race pace. And that was a really good session, and that it was like, okay, this is a big chunk of volume all in one day. But I think for me, the most important thing was really learning how to deal with the recovery. Like I've done a lot of hard sessions in my training, but never that much volume before. And that particular day, I remember it took me just way too long to get over it, and I was very impatient. I kept trying to kind of force things before my body was really ready. It's like, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, I've got to be able to do a workout. And I think this whole block was really an experiment, and that was one of the big things, was trying to balance these super long sessions with the recovery needed. So that was one. And then all of these long runs I did with my coach, John Waldron, on the river, really all of them went pretty well. The longest one we did was 64K, so just about 40 miles. And that was more just like a time on feet run to just do the longest run I'd ever done. And then we did probably 2 or 3 other runs that were more like race pace. So the best of those was we did 52K at like 328K pace, which, that was kind of like my goal for at least the first half of the race was around 330, like 540 mile pace. And that was a really, really good session. I was about 3 weeks out. So it was kind of when I was like, okay, everything is ready. Now we just have to get there without getting in trouble.
What are some of the things you do from a recovery standpoint to get back out there quicker?
So a big thing, I've been seeing a guy named Sam Peck over in Teal Square. He works with
a massage therapist.
Yeah, he's a massage therapist. He works with a lot of Tufts athletes, so that's the connection there. I went to Tufts undergrad, and I've been seeing him since college, but he's been kind enough to work with me pretty much once a week since I've been back here, and it's been super helpful. Being able to just see him consistently, like right after my big sessions, has definitely helped a lot. Beyond that, it's like the stuff you always hear. It's eating well, it's sleeping well, it's listening to my body. So kind of like I just said before, I wasn't doing, but trying really hard to listen to your body and making sure that you're taking the recovery that you need. Anyone will tell you like the training benefits happen between your hard sessions. You have to let your body heal and recover and adapt to those stresses, and then you can be stronger. And if you don't, then that's how you overtrain. So just trying to do that, trying to run slow when I need to run slow. I try to run on grass as much as I can. I live really close to the MIT campus, so I do. Again, if you look at my Strava, I live a very boring running life. I do a lot of loops around the fields there.
Yeah, if you put on the privacy beacon, you'd wipe out all your runs.
Yeah, I know, right? Like half of my runs are within a mile of my house, probably. But yeah, like doing a lot of runs on grass, doing some barefoot running on the turf field over there too. Just anything that I can do to kind of get my legs moving but trying not to overstrain them in terms of impact trauma. Cool.
So something that I think that amateurs need to hear more of is the pace that someone like you runs easy at. So for context, your goal 100K pace was high fives.
Yep.
What does easy look like for you? And how long are you going when you go easy?
That's a good question. So when I'm kind of in peak mileage at sea level, it would probably be in the morning would be like 80 to 90 minutes, and that might average out to, I assume everyone's doing miles. So I'll say somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30 per mile, probably depending on what, like what I did
How
the day
wrecked you
before,
are, yeah.
right? How wrecked I am, better way to say it. And that's honestly the thing that though about that is that first half mile or mile might be over 8-minute mile pace. And I've learned to kind of not care about that. There are some people that I go running with them and they just like out the door, like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I need to like warm up a little bit. I think the more you run and the more kind of work you have in your legs, the more important it is to really jog into those even those normal runs. It's something I learned from athletes all over the world. Pretty much everyone else does that. I think the whole like GPS and Strava thing has made people kind of anal, like, oh, that first mile split really counts. But I would say 99% of my easy runs, it's like if I just look at like the average pace on my watch, and it will go down every single mile of the run pretty much.
Yeah, it's personally, it's made a huge difference in my own training. I was talking with a friend yesterday who's coming back after she ran Boston, and she was like, yeah, anytime you're looking for some slow miles, let me know. And I replied to her, I was like, yeah, my Friday miles are slow, and I've got some slow miles on Thursday, and Sundays are slow too. And I'm like thinking through it, and like, most of my days have been slow. Are slow relative to, a workout on Wednesday and long run on Saturday. And I think that so many, mostly amateurs, are in that gray zone of, not too hard, but not easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to find the pace that lets you recover. So it's all about the balance. Like if you're not doing any real structured running, like when I'm during the summer, for example, is usually kind of my like base phase. But I'm not really doing any super hard workouts, then I'll actually run faster on my kind of everyday runs than even if I'm at altitude than I will here during a big block of workouts, just because I'm not worried about recovering because I'm not really doing anything, So it's really about making sure that those runs serve their purpose. And sometimes that purpose is aerobic stimulus, and sometimes that purpose is just recovery to get you to the next hard session.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit more about the event.
Sure, yeah.
What was it like being out there? Was it looked like a big media event? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Honestly, it was super fun. It was a really, really great group of people. Hoka did an awesome job of putting on an event that just felt really professional. Everything from just the way it was set up for us athletes, we were taken care of extremely well. We had everything we needed. There was some media events, there's press conference, and obviously during the race, I heard tons of positive feedback about how good the stream was, how it was like better than the Boston Marathon stream.
It was awesome.
Like really, really good. Like I was talking to Weldon Johnson from Let's Run after the race. He's like, yeah, I expected it to be like some guy on a bike with his iPhone in his back pocket or something. I was like,
it set the bar really high.
I know. They did really well, and I think that it's exciting to see. Hoka was a brand that started out as an ultra shoe, obviously, and it's exciting to see them really embrace their roots and try and really promote ultra running as something that is cool and, is like real racing and is fast running and not to, put down other kinds of ultra running, trail running and stuff. I mean, that stuff is probably even way harder to cover. But I think it's cool to see like this faster road ultra, which I think is kind of where my niche specialty is, as something that they really want to promote. So yeah, it was an amazing event to be a part of. The guys and girls on the team were just an awesome group of people. Everyone was super supportive. And I think one of the coolest things was because it was kind of a time trial event, there wasn't much competition. It was very much felt like we were all in it together. Yeah. We all knew kind of what everybody was going for. And so, like Jim Walmsley and I were, I didn't feel like, oh, I gotta beat Jim, or like there's just like, okay, we're gonna go work together, and Patrick's gonna do his thing, Wardian's gonna do his thing, and it was just a very, very fun team like atmosphere.
Funniest thing I heard about the whole weekend was Wardian was bummed that he had an early flight the next day and he couldn't do a local race.
Yeah, did you hear that from me?
I may have. I don't
yeah,
remember.
it's true. He, we were at the press conference and someone jokingly was like, "Mike, where are you racing whatever? Where are you racing on Sunday?" And he was like, "Oh man, yeah, like I got approached by someone to do this 5-miler Sunday morning, but I have an early flight." And I was like, "Wardian, okay,
He's
buddy.
a special guy.
He's a special guy."
He didn't do his depletion mile, did he?
I don't think he did. He was pretty wrecked. I don't think he did anything that night.
Nice. What do the next few months look like for you?
So if my recovery goes well, I'm going to actually try and go around Vermont City,
Nice.
which is in 2.5 weeks. So obviously it's a super short turnaround.
Mhm.
But I love that race. I've won it the last 2 years and again back in 2014, I think. And they approached me early in the year and asked if I wanted to go back. And I said, hey, I've got this big thing on May 4th, but assuming that goes well, I'll go give it a shot. Again, this is like another example of like, could go well or could go super
Right.
poorly. I have no idea. So I'm going to go up there, give it a shot, and then I'll take like a real break after that. And then the fall, I'm hoping to run the U.S. national team for 50K Worlds again. So the last time they had that was 2016 when I was second and Tony Milios, was first. So that was a really awesome race, and it's awesome to be on national team. So do that, and then the Olympic marathon trials are late February of 2020. So that's probably the next big thing.
Cool. What you seem to love the 50K distance.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the 50K is definitely the distance that I've found the most success at on the global stage. Obviously, it's not super deep or it's not raced terribly often, but I think it's the thing that I've kind of made my specialty. I do think that I can run a really good 50 miles or even 100K in my future at some point, but I think that for now, the 50K, going there, trying to do as well as I can at Worlds. I mean, I still think that the 50K world record overall is in my wheelhouse. Is something I want to try and tackle at some point in the next couple of years.
What's that record?
It's 2:43:38, so it's like 2:18 flat marathon pace, something like that. Yeah, so it's definitely doable. I think I was in shape to do it last spring. Again, we just got a real hot day, and I think I was on pace until like 40K, and then just fell off in the sun. But that's definitely kind of where I see my specialty right now.
Cool. Why do you make your goals so public?
I don't really have an option. I mean, I'm basically like a walking billboard, right? Like that's what Hoka is paying me to do.
Right.
And
but it seems like you like that style. Or do you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I recognize that guys like me or Jim Walmsley get a lot of hate for kind of like talking
Right.
like they have really big goals, and I think it can be seen as arrogance, which is fair. Like I understand that, but at the same time, it's my job to be transparent. I think
Right.
as an athlete, I think that it kind of bugs me when top level guys are kind of hiding from the media and they just show up the day before the race and then run and that's it. And like I kind of pride myself on trying to be as transparent as possible, like I've been logging publicly since like college basically. And, I try to be pretty open on my social media accounts about what's going on. Obviously Project Carbon X was super like, don't talk about it until right before the race. So I kind of had to be more vague there. But as soon as they gave us the okay, I was like, okay, this is my goal. This is my race plan. This is what we're going to do. And like, that was my race plan, was what I did.
Yeah.
So that's in terms of like, do I like it or not? I think it definitely gives me motivation. But it also it's the balance between motivation and pressure, right? So it gives me motivation, and then it's like, okay, I put it out there, now I really have to live up to this. But it's also like, okay, this would be a lot easier if like I were the only one who knew what I was shooting for, and then afterwards I could be like, oh, it was good, don't worry about it,
But I think it's cool. I think with you, with Walmsley, with Scott Fauble, I saw it, early on in my running career from Shalane Flanagan.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I don't see it as arrogance. I see it as this is me. This is what I'm striving for, and you can set big goals too, and come along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope it's not arrogance. I don't try to be arrogant. I try to be again, I would just use the word transparent.
Yeah.
It's like, this is my thought process. I'm a pretty open book in terms of that. Like my log is very detailed. It's not censored at all. It's like some of my entries are like pages long. It's all there. Like that's me. And if you want to look inside my head, that's where you can go.
Definitely. So you got into running on the later side. Why? What got you into running?
I started running as a senior in high school. Seriously, I had been on the cross country team before that, but honestly, it was kind of my last priority. I never thought of myself as an athletic person at all. I was like the music kid. I was played in all the bands and everything. And I would say it was a twofold thing that happened the senior year. One was that we had a new coach, was still my coach, John Waldron, and he really connected with me. And the other is that I had a crush on a girl on the cross country team and kind of wanted to
always
take the sport
way.
more seriously to try and get a little more attention from her, maybe. And in retrospect, I think I'm someone who is extremely motivated and goal oriented and numbers oriented, and so all of those things kind of preset running as something that could be really powerful for me. So it was kind of this perfect storm of all these things coming together. But really, once that happened, I was pretty hooked, and my coach really instilled in me this idea of loving the process of just getting better relative to yourself. And so, I only ran 18:30 that year, but to me that was like, oh wow, we're in 18:30.
Right.
I'm so good, And so like that was so exciting to be like, oh, I just took 2.5 minutes off my PR or whatever. I'm gonna be like, I'm amazing at this. And that felt really good, and I had no idea what that meant in the broader context of running. All I knew was that like, okay, I'm a lot better than I was 3 months ago at the beginning of this season, and that was a really addictive feeling.
Yeah, it's when you can, I don't want to say disassociate, but remove the full validation of tangible results into the loving the process. And that's definitely a thread or a consistent theme that people on the podcast have mentioned. I mean, the whole goal of this podcast is exploring the why and exploring like what keeps people motivated and what keeps people engaged. And over and over again, it's like, I just love it. It's just so fun. The community, the goals, all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you don't love the process, if you only love being good, then you won't last, because you'll never be good enough. Like there was always another tier above you. Like even if you're Mo Farah, like there's always Eliud Kipchoge. I guess Eliud Kipchoge is actually really good, but like if just being good is all you care about, then like, okay, maybe you're really good in high school and then you get to college and all of a sudden you're getting crushed, right? So you really need the people who have the longevity in the sport and who stick with it are the people who, like you say, they find the love for the process, and that's something I've really found over the years for myself.
Cool. So who are some of the partners that allow you to continue, living the dream, doing what you love?
Yeah, I mean, the big one is obviously Hoka. They support me financially and with gear and shoes and everything. And they really, speaking of taking chances, like they took a chance on me way back when, kind of right when they're bursting onto the road scene, kind of trying to get out of the ultra only market, and kind of looking for young guys that they saw as, maybe up and comers. So like they actually started talking to me before I'd even debuted in the marathon. And ever since then, they've been super supportive. They've been better every year to me. And really helped kind of steer me in the right directions, and also just been super supportive personally. Like it's a really awesome group of people. They've been really nice to me after this race. Like I was kind of beating myself up, and like every single person I talked to is like, that's awesome. Don't beat yourself up. You just like try to do something insane, and we're really proud of you. So, that means a lot, especially coming from the people who write my paychecks, to know that like, okay, well, at least they're psyched with what we did. So so they're a big one. Nuun is another one that helps me out, and then Strive, which is a program I work with during the summer. They've been really supportive of me as well, and I'm down there during the summer leading trips of high school and college kids in Peru, and then we also have a program in Kenya. It's a super cool program. It's a really fun part of my year, part where I kind of like get to put my own running on the back burner and focus on hanging out with kids and stuff. It's really fun.
Let's talk more about that. I've seen that. I've seen you post about it, things like that. How'd you get into that?
So I started with Strive when I was in college, and I got hired as basically like a big camp counselor to lead these programs in Peru. I'd already had a decent amount of experience in Latin America, and they wanted to set up a program there in Peru. And the real mission with Strive, it's a combination of an international service learning program and a running camp. So it's this really cool hybrid of you get these kids who are super motivated and driven, and yet they also want to learn about how to give back to a community and be in a really different and unique place. And I get to kind of be there as the facilitator and help them kind of navigate that world. So we have high school and college kids that come down anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks. And the focus is it's like learning about community service, how to do service well and ethically. And then also our programs are at altitude and we cater to runners. So we have structured space for that as well.
Cool.
So.
What are some of the things that you know now that you wish you had learned earlier in your running career?
That's a good question. What do I wish I had known earlier?
Or what are some of the lessons you've repeatedly learned that you have finally stuck?
Maybe they still haven't stuck yet. I think patience is one that I'm still learning. And it manifests in so many different ways, whether it's being patient during a race, whether it's being patient over the course of a few weeks, or even being patient over the course of a few years. I think that having a very long-term approach and recognizing, this kind of goes back to what we were just saying about the process, that the goals will come with a process that is good and sustainable. So if you try to squeeze every drop of juice out of the orange in high school or in college, that's probably all you're going to get. And I'm someone who would rather have that long career and still be loving what I'm doing and still be improving, at my age.
Definitely. Yeah. So the first podcast I did was with Ben Rosario, and
nice.
we talked about the fact that like they don't talk about numbers. They don't talk about, we want to do this, we want to do that. It's all about if you do the work and you put in the work that you can control, the results will come.
Yep.
And I found it fascinating coming from someone who's responsible for coaching athletes who are making, their livelihood is performing and performing well. It's not just showing up and smiling on race day. Like they need to perform.
Yeah.
So it was just sort of a profound statement that from him based on the athletes he works with, and it really resonated.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think that the good thing is that the coaches and the people who run these companies a lot of the time understand that, and they understand that, okay, this person, whether it's Scott Fauble or whomever, this person is super talented. They're putting in a lot of work. If race day doesn't go perfectly, it's not necessarily a reflection on the athlete, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that you have a lot of people who, they see someone who has a bad race or gets injured and they're like, oh, this person's done. This person isn't any good. And it's kind of a bummer because you read that and it's very discouraging as an athlete of any level. You're like, oh man, like that's right. Like you have one bad race and everything is over, or you lose a season or a year to an injury and like your whole life is over. But the truth is that yes, if you stick with it and you're patient and you're consistent, like you will get better. That's just true, like over time. And it doesn't mean that every single race is going to be better than the last one, but it means that like when you draw that, smoothed out curve, it should be going up.
Definitely. I thought when I set my goal of BQing, and at the time it was a 3:05, to do so, I was like, yeah, one training cycle, I'll nail it. This was 2014, 2015. And I didn't get close. It took me like my last marathon PR was 2016. And 3 years later, I finally, hit that sub 3.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people are stuck on chasing these short-term accomplishments. And I forget who I was talking about it with on a previous episode, but they were like, you can't set, I mean, you can set these big goals, but you have to be realistic and set, smaller goals along the way. If your goal is to
Right.
BQ or OTQ or make the Olympic team or sub 2 marathon, whatever the crazy goal is, you have to have those crazy goals, but you have to be at least somewhat realistic about it.
Yeah, and I think it's also about like running is and marathoning in particular, or ultra racing or whatever is very challenging in that you get very few data points where you actually test yourself.
Right.
So if all you look at is how did my marathon go, and you only do 2 a year, is you just have such a small
Right.
sample size. It's very hard to draw conclusions from that. That's why, like I was saying before, I kind of try to look at like what Fabo said, like the whole buildup, like how did this go, and so instead of just saying how did my race day go, because that could be anything, you could get
Right.
food poisoning and or like break your foot or something weird, that could be anything. Whereas if you look at, okay, I'm looking at the last 4 months of my training, and I usually do similar workouts, and these workouts were way better than a year ago. That's a really good sign. It doesn't, like, yes, obviously you want the race to reflect that, but it's
Right.
not always going to. And like, that's a truth that you just have to accept. Like sometimes it will go really well and it'll really line up with your training. And those are like the most gratifying moments of your whole life, or when
Right.
it's like you have this great buildup and then you have a great race. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have a really great buildup and you have a really shitty race. And it's like, okay, well, that's all.
That's life. That's part of it.
life. Yeah, like I still had a great buildup. It still sets me up really well to now have an even greater race, whatever, next year in the fall or something. But it's not always going to work out the way I want it to.
And I think doing it that way removes some of the pressure. I mean, so many people put so much pressure on race day, and race day should be the celebration, not the test.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like nobody gets medals for their training logs, right? So like race day does matter, and there is pressure, and that's important. But it can't be like the only thing that matters. I mean, I guess like maybe. Like, let's say you're a miler and you race like 10 times a season or
Right.
something, and it's like, okay, all my races go really poorly, but my training is going great.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah,
maybe
maybe you
your
should
training's
change
not
something.
actually going
Yeah.
great. Yeah. It's like if you have like 10 bad marathons in a row, then it's like, okay, then maybe
Reassess.
something is going on here. But yeah, if you have like one race that doesn't go well, it's not the end of the world.
So what suggestions do you have for someone that's looking to step up in mileage, whether it's mileage in training or mileage in racing?
Be patient, be gradual, just bit by bit. One thing that people often ask me about doubles, like running twice a day. And one thing that I did pretty early on, like way back in college, was I started doing cross training sessions. So I was exercising twice a day almost every day,
Mhm.
even though I was maybe only running like 8 or 9 times a week. Like I was doubling once or twice a week. And I think that was really beneficial for me, because what it meant was my body was already used to that idea of working out twice a day, but I wasn't getting as much impact as I would from running twice a day or from whatever, doubling my mileage all of a sudden.
Yeah, so metabolically, your system is getting used
So
to
just
it.
like, yeah, but body wise, I'm used to doing that. And then like over literally several years, I would, okay, I'm doing 1 double a week and then 2 doubles a week and then 3. And now it's like I double almost every single day of the year. So it's like, and that feels totally normal and natural. But the big thing with volume is you just have to be careful. Like there's no shortcut. There's no secret.
Right.
Like I said before, you can like run on grass, run on turf, run on soft surfaces as much as you can. But just be careful. Don't try and make huge jumps. It'll almost always end up biting you harder than it'll help you in the end.
Definitely. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
What gets me out of bed in the morning?
Or what gets you out the door?
What gets me out the door? I think that I just love the process of trying to make myself better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every day in a season is like one little step. And so I live a very routined life. And part of the reason for that is that I never really question. There is no like I'm not
Should
going
I
to go
do
do my
this?
run.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to have coffee, and then I'm going to go run. That's it. Like there's no thinking about it. And I think that one of the things about having a really good routine is that it takes the thought out of it, and it just becomes part of your life. And yeah, like are there afternoons where I'm like super lazy and tired and I'm like, oh, it's like raining out, I don't want to go run? Yeah, of course. Like that's super natural. And I'm still going to go do it. I'm still going to get my run done. I mean, obviously, unless I'm like physically injured or like so low energy that it's like overtraining or something, then again, listen to your body. But I think in terms of just getting me out the door, it's like I've established this routine that is part of my life and that I love, you know, like as much as I grumble about those runs, I always feel better afterwards. And I know that. And that's really what gets me out the door, is just the motivation to do these little things every single day, so that every year I can feel like I'm making progress and I'm getting better and I'm getting the most out of myself.
Definitely. I had a coach that talked about training as basically building a house brick by brick, and I love that analogy.
Yeah, like every day is a little building block.
Definitely. How do you feel about balance?
You should ask my wife that question. Yeah, it's really hard. Running is a year-long sport. It never stops. And at least when you're in season, there are no weekends. There's no Friday nights. Every day is another day. And, you know, like I said, I run pretty much twice a day, every single day. So it's really hard. It's a very hard balance. I think I'm slowly getting better at it every year, but it's still something that I struggle with all the time. It's something that is really hard for my family and my friends, but I'm really lucky in that they're very supportive of me, and I'm really grateful to them every single day that they are willing to put up with my crazy lifestyle. And, you know, I hope that I can continue to do what I love and chase my dreams while also like continuing to be a good friend and a good partner and all these other things that life demands of me. I think that in general, balance is something that it really makes you think about everything else in your life besides running. And running is a sport that is very unforgiving sometimes when you don't kind of put it front and center. But that said, I think that the other side of that coin is that for some people, at least, like I'm a much happier person when I do have some balance in my life. You know, like people talk about Kipchoge at his training camp and doing nothing but running all day with his running buddies. And like, I do have periods like that. Like when I go to Ecuador, my life is more like that. But I wouldn't want to do that all the time. I think that I'm a happier overall human being when I do have a little bit of that balance and I have people in my life that I love and care about around me. And that I think makes me a better athlete. I think being a happier person makes me a better athlete.
Definitely. Magda Boulay had a really interesting answer to this question, and she said, I don't remember if she actually said that balance is overrated or if that was sort of what she inferred with her answer, but her answer was, look, at the end of the day, if I can go home and look her son Owen or her husband in the eye and smile and be happy and not miss time with them and be a good employee and be a good boss and be a good athlete, she's doing the things that bring her fulfillment, and the rest is just fringe. If you have time for whatever it might be that isn't as important to you, great. If not, you're doing the things that are important, and that's what she qualifies as fulfilling and enriching and having a good life.
Yeah. No, and I think that's true. It's like where do you draw the line between the balance with things that you need to be happy and the things that are extravagant? And yeah, for me, like I can be a very introverted person. I can also be a very extroverted person. So like I do require a little bit of both. I think that for someone who's super introverted, like, yeah, maybe all you need is running, and that's great. I don't think that I could do that forever. But beyond my running and my family and my close friends, I don't miss going out to bars on Friday night. I don't miss, whatever, like college parties or something that I didn't go to in college because I had a race the next day. I don't feel bad about missing most of those things. Like I feel bad about, oh, it's my friend's wedding and it's a really bad time because it's right before this huge race and it's across the country, and like, oh, am I going to be able to go to that? Like there are some things where it's like, oh, this is a really hard decision and I'm going to have to figure something out. But a lot of the time it's like, okay, like these are the people that I really care about, and I want to make sure I have time to be a part of their lives and vice versa. And that's kind of how I try and live my life.
Cool. I think that's a good place to end things. Where can people find you on social?
Tyler C. Andrews is my Instagram handle, and on Facebook too. I think it's the same. And I think I have a Twitter, but honestly, it just reposts my Instagram. So just follow me on Instagram.
Cool. And you got some fun workouts that you post on Strava, so that's always fun to follow along with.
Yeah.
Tyler, thanks so much for joining today, and best of luck at Vermont City if the recovery goes well.
Thank you very much. I'll do my best.
Sounds good. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.